Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 591. 591. Sunday, October the 28th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, I have a little bit of a head cold, so I probably sound a little funny, but that's okay. I feel fine. Every year, about this time of year, when we go from that transition from fall into winter, I get a little head cold, so it's normal. So, okay, so no big deal. Everything's cool. Let's see here. Yeah, before I get into the news of the day here this morning, just a couple things about the election. I'm still feeling like it's going to be a big night for Republicans and a very bad night for the Commie-crats. But there's a couple races that are starting to worry me a little bit, particularly in Florida. You still see where DeSantis is still down to Gillum in that race, and I'm really surprised. I thought he would have surpassed him by now. So the demographics in Florida are crazy, and it's always one of them really states that's really always very, very close. I mean, we know just in the last, elections going all the way back to the Bush-Gore race, Florida always is a really, really close contest. But I thought in this particular case, because of the FBI sting and the corruption and all the other stuff going on around Gillum, and the fact that DeSantis is a really good candidate, that would not be that tough of a race. I thought that DeSantis would really be able to win that. I didn't think it would be such a struggle, but man, here we are sitting a week out from the election, and Gillum is still up in that race, and it's by several points. It's more than the margin of error. So starting to get a little bit nervous about that, because Florida is a very important state, and it'll be a very important state in 2020, and would really hate to see that slip into the D column. So anyway, maybe some of you people down in Florida can tell me in the comments section why I should not be worried that governor's race there is going to go to DeSantis. So anything you can tell me in the comments section, any of you from Florida can tell me to give me a little confidence that DeSantis is going to pull that one out. I mean, he's a great guy and, really good candidate. And, I just thought, he would really be able to do well. And Gillum seems horrible to me. So, I don't know. Maybe I don't understand Florida as much as I thought I did or wished I did. But, we have another situation very similar to that in Ohio, I think. In Ohio, what we have is, in the Senate race, what we have going on here is, of course, Renacci versus Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown is a Clinton lackey, is who he is. But he only plans on being if he wins that seat, he only plans on being there for 2 years, because I promise you he is going to be in the field for Democratic 2020 candidates for president. And when you look at the field that's been thrown out there so far, that's a pretty bad field. I believe the rotten Reverend Clinton is going to throw her hat in the ring, but if she cannot do it for whatever reason, or if she gets embarrassed to the point where she realizes she would just get blasted in the primary and doesn't want to be embarrassed, she may bail out. But she will put her support behind Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown will do the bidding of Clinton. If Clinton can't get in there, Sherrod Brown will be the next best thing to her, because Sherrod Brown essentially is a tool of the rotten Reverend Clinton. So he is a person to watch here in Ohio. We don't want him to win, because that would give him a good launching point in 2 years to run. And he could be a dangerous candidate. He can raise a hell of a lot of money. He's hardcore backed by the Clintons, the establishment. He's a far left loony, but he's got this kind of easygoing personality. He's got the language down. He's a very slick character. He's a very, very slick character. He's a dangerous character too. Now, he is way ahead of Renacci right now in the polls. Now, I'm just hoping that's... Remember, Trump won Ohio by 11 points. So, I'm just hoping it's a bit of an anomaly and the polls are not off, because right now, there's 3 different polls here in Ohio, and they all show Sherrod Brown up by... one has him up by 14, another by 13, another by 16. So, and he was up by 18 in another poll that's like 2 weeks old. So he's lost about 2 points, but he's still got more than 10-point lead a week out from the election. We don't want Sherrod Brown to be the senator, and we'll do everything we can here to stop that from happening. But unfortunately, Jim Renacci, I know Trump likes him. He's probably a decent guy, a businessman type thing, and that's all well and good. But he's just not really. He's not a great candidate. He may be a great guy, or whatever. Maybe a great Republican, maybe a good conservative. I don't know. But not many people know much about Renacci. Everybody knows about Sherrod Brown. He's been a politician here in Ohio for decades and decades. I mean, I don't think he's ever had a real job. I think he's a career politician. And so Renacci doesn't have quite the name recognition that Brown has. And Renacci doesn't seem to be, a guy with a lot of charisma that's really motivates people to want to go out and vote for him. So hopefully it's just holding back the Democrats in general will be enough to pull him across the line. But right now it doesn't look good in Ohio for that Senate race. Sherrod Brown's got better than 10 point, 13, 14, 15 point lead right now with a week to go. It does not look good. And we also have the governor's race here, kind of like what you have in Florida, only the difference is in Florida you actually have a good guy with Ron DeSantis. Here in Ohio, we got a hack, a total hack named Mike DeWine. But Mike DeWine, despite the fact that he's a hack, and I don't want to vote for him, I know Larry doesn't want to vote for him. I'm a libertarian. I mean, I'm really inclined to vote for a libertarian. I mean, I know it's a vote for Cordray and against DeWine, but quite honestly, I don't see a big I almost, on some issues, I actually would prefer Cordray over DeWine. That's how bad DeWine is. I think he's really in that. I think he's in that clique with Kasich and that whole establishment. And he's another guy, DeWine, has been around forever, just like Cordray. These are all career politicians. Renacci's kind of the outsider in the Senate race, but in the governor's race, they're both career politicians. DeWine is, man, he's just. The Republicans in Ohio really did not feel very good candidates. Again, nothing against Renacci. I'm sure he's a good guy, but I think we could have probably done better for a Senate candidate than Renacci, to be honest with you. DeWine, I mean, it's going to be hard for me to vote for DeWine. I got to be honest with you. It's going to take a lot of strength for me to vote for him, but I almost have to because I feel like we have to stop Cordray. Now, that race is very close. The last polls here in Ohio, just yesterday was a Ohio poll that came out, like the Cleveland Plain Dealer poll or one of those, which is pretty reliable, pretty reputable poll, has DeWine down by 2 to Cordray. That's within the margin of error, and so it's hard to say. But DeWine's not a good character. If the Republican Party had a really good candidate for senator and governor, they would win pretty easily. They would win, with room to spare. But because we have one really lame, the governor, Mike DeWine, running for governor, really lame, and then we have Renacci, who's just not a very charismatic guy, not really catching fire, running against someone with the name recognition of Brown. It's a tough deal we have here in Ohio. So we'll do everything we can to pull through. I'm sure of that. But I'm more nervous about Florida simply because, even as liberal as Cordray and Brown are, they're nothing like a Gillum down in Florida. I mean, Gillum is just flat dangerous. And we don't want to even see a guy that far left to get anywhere elected in any state, well, other than like Vermont or something like that, or San Francisco. But you don't want to see that in Florida. Don't want to see that in Florida, and you certainly don't want to see it in Ohio. So anyway, those two races, Florida and Ohio, are two races I'm watching very carefully. We'll do everything we can, even if we have to hold our nose here and vote for a real stinker, Mike DeWine, to hold the governorship. And certainly we don't want Sherrod Brown anywhere near the Senate, but he may be going back at this point unless somehow Renacci can find a way to close the gap. Trump is coming back to Ohio this week to campaign for Renacci, and I imagine Mike DeWine. He'll certainly campaign for DeWine, but my guess is that Trump doesn't know DeWine very well and probably knows he's kind of a hack, but knows he's better than the Democrat. So that's kind of how I see that playing out. But yeah, Renacci is going to need almost a miracle at this point if the polls are correct. And I hope it doesn't come down to that in Florida. Hopefully this is just an anomaly or something, and DeSantis wins that race in Florida. I find it hard to believe with the scandals and stuff going on around Gillum that race is even as close as it is. It's a little frightening. Alrighty. Also, the lawyer for Cesar Sayak, or whatever his name is, it appears that he doesn't actually have his own lawyer, It appears that his family right now is providing a lawyer for him. I guess they're paying a legal bill because he don't have any money. And I guess it's better than a public defender. So he's just a family lawyer. So this guy's not like a big name lawyer from a big name law firm. It's not a DNC lawyer or anything like that. It's just a lawyer who represents the family of I guess the ex-mother or whatever. But I guess it's the family putting up the money for this guy. And more information coming out about him now. It appears that he's a little on the mentally ill side, which would make sense. He has to be mentally ill. He's either some kind of operative connected to a deep state plot, or he is a mentally ill individual, and he would have to be. Let's face it, those cartoon bombs were a joke. He's now saying that he never intended to harm anyone with those bombs, which, you know, means he has to be an idiot, because if his intention wasn't to harm anybody, then what was the only other point of sending out those cartoon bombs? What effect did that have? Well, it provided a narrative for the loony lefties to use against Trump and Republicans less than 2 weeks out from election. So if he loved Trump and is all high on Republican politics, that how in the world he thought that sending cartoon bombs to all these Democrats would somehow help Trump and Republicans in the upcoming election? He would have to be mentally ill to believe that. He would have to be even stupid on top of being mentally ill, because that's a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer. So, as I said in the previous video, he's either some kind of a Democratic operative, a plant, a patsy, something going on there deep state-wise, or else he is literally just a dumbass and probably mentally ill. So right now it's starting to lean towards that he's just not a very smart dude. Didn't think about how this was going to play out. He's obviously not very smart, and maybe has some mental illness. Obviously he's a dead-ender. He's got a lot of problems. Some people are saying that he looked at Trump as like a father figure. So there's some stuff going on with this guy. Mentally ill. You know, a little bit. His elevator doesn't go all the way up. Obviously not smart at all, because you know, you don't have to be very, very intelligent to figure out how that was going to play. I mean, it was just a really stupid thing to do on his part. Really stupid. But anyway, that's what we know at this point about Cesar, the cartoon bomber. He is part Filipino, by the way. Apparently, Filipino and Italian are the two makeups of his culture, I guess. So let's move on. The most important story that's not being talked about at all, and it has a lot to do with the fact that we have an election going on. We have the cartoon bomber. We have the caravan going on. The fallout from Kavanaugh. All this other stuff is shading a very important story that is actually happening, and a few people have picked up on it, and one of those people is Mark Levin, was talking about this. That's how I heard about it. And it's based on a story that was written by Politico about a week ago. So this has been out there, but nobody's really talking much about it. But here's the nuts and bolts of the story. Apparently, Uncle Bob, the executioner, Mueller, is locked in a dispute with a mystery grand jury witness. This case is sealed. So what is going on? Well, it's a sealed case, so it's hard to know. But some people a little bit in the know about this are saying that this guy, Andrew Mueller, was a guy who was called to be called by Uncle Bob the executioner to testify, and this individual was someone who had a relationship with or a friendship with Roger Stone. So apparently Uncle Bob the executioner was trying to find an angle to put the squeeze on Roger Stone, and he was trying to use this guy Andrew Mueller to do that, to get him to testify and say something that might give Uncle Bob the executioner some ammunition to go after Roger Stone. Well, apparently this guy Andrew Mueller decided to lawyer up, and rather than subject himself to being a witness to Uncle Bob, he has instead filed a suit against Uncle Bob, challenging his constitutional appointment as special counsel. The way it was done, the scope of what he can do, and all that sort of thing is now being challenged. And so this case has then been sealed so you can't go in and really find out too much about it. But there are some people who have a little bit of knowledge and are basically talking about what may be going on here behind the scenes. So it appears that this Andrew Mueller, subpoenaed by Uncle Bob to try to get information to squeeze Roger Stone, and apparently this guy, Mr. Mueller, Andrew Mueller, his attorneys fought back against Uncle Bob, saying that Mr. Mueller is not going to testify to Uncle Bob, and in fact they're going to file a countersuit to challenge the authority of Uncle Bob the executioner, and whether or not he is even in violation of the special counsel law. So apparently this has been going on since August. So apparently what happened is they went through the initial preliminary part of the hearings, and eventually there was a ruling which went against Mr. Mueller. But they apparently had a couple other court appearances where they appealed to that, and then it went back in favor of Mr. Mueller. Then it went back to this original judge. Now it appears it's found itself into the District of Columbia, District of Criminals, Court of Appeals. Now there's 10 judges on that appeals court who will hear this and have to make a decision. One of them was a Trump appointee who's recused himself, leaving 9 Obama appointees. So what they're predicting is that Mr. Mueller is going to lose in the Court of Appeals, at which point they're likely going to go to the Supreme Court. And we'll find out probably in the weeks to come whether or not that happens, and whether or not the Supreme Court will even hear the case. And the case ultimately is challenging the constitutionality of the appointment of Uncle Bob the executioner. And there's 3 or 4 factors involved, including the biggest one that many people are still talking about, that I've mentioned before, that when Rodenstein appointed Uncle Bob the executioner, he never established a crime. There was never a crime, an established crime. Plus, from all the other things that we're learning, we know it was a frame-up operation and all the rest. It brings other things into play. And then there's a couple real, couple things that are involved here as well. That are real sticklers about, getting down to the fine wording of special counsel and the special counsel law. Because there is a special counsel law that has certain criteria. And so they're questioning some of the criteria in the special counsel law, whether that was met. So this is a complex thing. It's obviously a sealed case, so you can't get public information about it. All they can get about it is what they can, eke out of a few people who are in the know around this case. Roger Stone himself is aware of what Andrew Mueller is doing. He's watching it carefully, and Stone says as far as he knows there's no one else making any type of challenge like this, so he's certain that if this reporting is correct, and it's likely having to do with Andrew Mueller. So we'll continue to see what happens here, because again, this would be extraordinary if this went to the Supreme Court and they ruled, the special counsel, Uncle Bob the executioner, is unconstitutional, and it's not consistent with the special counsel law. There's a problem, and Rodenstein made a big mistake, and so the special counsel has to go. That could affect every single case that he's brought so far. And so we'll keep following this and see where it goes. Next, we have the Pittsburgh shooting. And of course, this shooter was a Trump hater, mostly a Jew hater. And he hated Trump also because he thinks that Trump is controlled by Jews. So he goes into this synagogue with a couple of pistols and an AK, and he shouts, "All Jews must die," and he starts gunning down people. At this time, there's 11 dead, 4 wounded at this time. So this guy was obviously a rabid anti-Semite, Jew-hating, crazy person. Just don't know what to think of this individual, but obviously this is just a hateful act of racism, and boy oh boy. I don't know if they have the death penalty in Pennsylvania or not, but this is clearly a case where you should get the death penalty. There's no question about who's guilty, that he is guilty of this crime. There's no question it's a crime of just pure meanness. And the people of Pennsylvania shouldn't even have to pay the monthly fee to keep this guy alive in prison for the rest of his life. This guy should just be tried. He's obviously guilty. I caught him red-handed. They've captured him alive. Surprised he didn't kill himself. Man, he should get a quick trial, quick, fair hearing, quick trial, and they should just take him out and smoke him one way or another. I don't care how. Hang him, shoot him, electrocute him. I don't care. Okay, we have Obama out there again on the campaign trail, lying his ass off, as usual. He told so many lies, I just lost track of them all over the 8 years that he was president. So he made this comment last night. He said, politicians lying is something we've not seen before. Now, he's in Wisconsin at the time giving the speech. Yeah, lying is something we have not seen before. This is from the guy who said if you like your health care, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. The days of 2% growth are over. Manufacturing jobs are not coming back. I had a corruption-free administration. I had the most open administration in presidential history. I mean, this guy lied. Everything that came out of his mouth was a lie. His entire image, his entire... He is a walking lie. Everything about the guy was a lie. Boy, he's an arrogant son of a bitch. We have the Rotten Reverend Clinton, who was doing a Q&A the other day, and she giggled when asked a question about running for president, and said that she giggled and said no, she wouldn't be running. And then she said, but she would like to be president. Yes, she would like to be president. That's a fact. That is a guaranteed fact. You know that. We have Beto O'Rourke, now eclipsing the $70 million mark. $70 million for a Senate race in Texas by a Democrat. He's still down to Ted Cruz 7 points, and he appears to be on a downward trend. If that continues, by Election Day, he'll be down by 8, 9, 10 points. Having spent probably $70, $80 million by then. Most of that money, though, coming from out of state, and that explains it. If he had raised $70 million in Texas, he'd be ahead by 50 points. But the reason he's down by 7, having raised $70 million, is because all that money's coming from out of Texas. It's not from people in Texas who, like O'Rourke, is donating all that money. That's not what the media will tell you. The media wants you to believe that it's all these small donors in Texas giving it to Beto. It's not. It's not. It's mostly money coming in from outside of the state of Texas. And it's not. And he's not going to be able to buy that Senate seat from outside Texas. Cruz is going to win that race. Papadopoulos. It appears to me that we may be looking at a case of the hunted becoming the hunter. How ironic would it be that the guy who they looked at in 2016 said, hey, this young campaign aide, Papadopoulos, we could use this guy. We could set this guy up very easy. He'd be the perfect patsy, the perfect pawn. We can frame this guy. This is the guy we should target right here. And that's how they got to Papadopoulos. Wouldn't it be ironic if it turns out that it's Papadopoulos that brings down the entire house of cards? And that very likely could happen. Now we know that last week, Carter Page did file suit against the DNC and 2 or 3 other entities that were involved in violating his rights. And I'm sure that when more information comes out, he'll also have a civil rights case against the government. I'm certain that'll be happening as well. But now we see that Papadopoulos is saying that he too is pretty sure that he was set up by intelligence officials, not just Western foreign intelligence, but U.S. intelligence, and even more specifically, the FBI, probably the CIA involved. And so now Papadopoulos is saying he's going to try to withdraw his guilty verdict now, or guilty plea. I don't know if you can do that after you've had a sentencing. After sentencing, it's probably hard to do. And as I said yesterday, he should go ahead and do the 2 weeks. It'll help him get a larger settlement, which he'll get. No question in my mind. But Papadopoulos, remember, he was the guy. And he was the guy who the FBI says was the reason that they opened the counterintelligence operation Crossfire Hurricane. Based on the fact that he allegedly told Down the Hatch Downer something about the Russians having Clinton emails, which made him look like he was in the know, which is why he probably had a FISA warrant on him as well, or a national security letter or something. Obviously, they had surveillance on him. He came into contact with what he believes was at least 6 intelligence or counterintelligence type people who were trying to frame him, or did frame him, in fact. So apparently he was in this hearing, and he learned something in that hearing that, and it probably had something to do with the exculpatory evidence. The fact that he learned, probably from Mark Meadows and from Ratcliffe, that they've seen documents that show that it's known that Papadopoulos told the FBI that he believed that Downer or Halper or both were recording him, that he thought there was some kind of frame-up going on or something, something going on that wasn't above board with these individuals, Misfit, Halper, Downer. The FBI was well aware of this. They're also well aware of the fact that he denied saying anything to Halper about Russians, denied saying anything to Downer about Russians, told the FBI that he told Halper to quit bothering him about this Russia thing. All this was withheld from the FISA court, okay? So this is one angle. But if Papadopoulos can prove, okay, so what that does, that disproves the entire Operation Crossfire Hurricane, the justification for it. We now know they knew was false. Not only did they go ahead and launch that operation anyway, which is one thing they did against Papadopoulos and the president and everyone around him. That would involve Strzok, McCabe, and the whole 9 yards, McComey, and all the rest. But then they go to the FISA court. And so all these things were done, really, and Papadopoulos was a key component of all of it. So if the Papadopoulos story is told, and it becomes very obvious that what he's saying is true, and I believe it is, that it's obvious that he was framed or set up, and that's certainly what it looks like. We know the exculpatory evidence part of it's a fact. It is truthful and can be proven, and that's already a major problem. But if it can also be shown that, in fact, he was set up, framed up, that blows this entire thing completely up. And that means that Papadopoulos, this guy who they thought would be the easy target, the pawn that they would play in this game, would be the guy who at the end comes back to bite them right in the ass. It will be Papadopoulos that comes back to bite them in the ass. Not only that, this opens up the door to Uncle Bob the Executioner, and what did he know? And he's seen this. Uncle Bob's seen all this. He knows every bit of this. He knows everything that we're learning now, and that we're learning from Papadopoulos, and we're learning from Mark Meadows, and from Ratcliffe about this exculpatory evidence regarding Papadopoulos, about the fact that the FBI knew that Papadopoulos was skeptical of Halper, didn't like Halper, told the FBI he told Halper to bug off, and the whole 9 yards. Uncle Bob the Executioner has seen all this information, but he pursued this investigation anyway, and went after Papadopoulos, and got him on a process crime. So this thing could get very, very interesting right after the midterms. And this is why there's so much on the line, and why so many efforts are being made for the Democrats to try to get a hold of the House so that they can stop all this. Because if they don't, it is going to go forward. But even if they were to take over the House now because you have Carter Page and Papadopoulos. I mean, they can take their cases into civil court. They can also go around the Congress. The Congress would not come into play if Papadopoulos and Carter Page file civil rights suits against the government. That would not really involve the Congress. So what it does is it means that this idea that if we lose the House, that all the investigations stop, that's not true. The House investigations will stop, but it's not going to stop Carter Page and Papadopoulos from pursuing direct suits, civil rights suits against the government, nor civil suits against any of the individuals in play. And something else that's really important about this, two things really. Number one, the situation with Papadopoulos and even Carter Page to a large extent will bring the UK and the Australian government back into this game. Obviously, they were deeply involved in this. Eventually, that's all going to come out too. But you will not be able to keep them out of this conversation with either the Carter Page or the Papadopoulos cases moving forward because they're intimately involved in what happened with both of these, especially in the case of Papadopoulos, because most of this activity was going on in the UK, and it involved the former Australian ambassador, Downer, who was operating in the UK at the time, obviously as some sort of an intelligence asset working to help frame up Papadopoulos. So this brings that into play, but it also exposes these three individuals, Misfit, Downer, and Halper. And if Papadopoulos moves forward with a civil suit, all three of these individuals will be deposed. We will get depositions from Halper, Downer, and Misfit, critical players in the frame-up. They've been able to avoid all of this up to this point because they've hidden Misfit away somewhere in Italy. The government and the intelligence agencies are hiding him because of what he would reveal. Halper is being protected, not just by the DOJ and the FBI, but also by Uncle Bob the Executioner. If you notice in the Papadopoulos filing, the filing by Uncle Bob against Papadopoulos, they leave the names of Halper and Downer completely out, especially Halper. He's only named as the confidential informant. But if Papadopoulos comes forward with the suit, that means that these three individuals will be deposed. They will have to face a deposition, and they have to tell the truth, or they could be in a lot of trouble. And that could open up everything. So even if the Democrats were to gain control of Congress, which I don't think they will, or the House of Representatives, that doesn't necessarily mean these cases won't move forward because you have Papadopoulos and Carter Page pursuing it through another direction. They're not going through the House of Representatives. They're going directly in a civil action or in a suit against the either a civil action directly to the perpetrators in Papadopoulos' case, or a civil suit directly to the government, the FBI, in the case of both Page and Papadopoulos. So these are very complex issues that will probably be worked out some way between the attorneys, and we'll have to see what happens after the midterms. If the Republicans hold on to the House, and I believe they will, then it's likely these attorneys, certainly Papadopoulos' attorney, will meet with some heads of the House Intelligence Committee, House Judiciary Committee, and say, okay, we're getting ready to proceed and do this and go forward with this. And but if the House of Representatives can assure his attorneys that they are going to proceed through to the Department of Justice, then there'll probably be some sort of a meeting of the minds there, exactly how they go about doing that. Or Papadopoulos' attorney could just say, well, you guys do what you're doing, but we're going to go ahead and go this route. So it's going to get very, very interesting after the midterm elections, regardless of what happens in the House of Representatives, because Papadopoulos has now decided that he is going to likely move forward and pursue this case, and that means that this guy, Papadopoulos, who was the initial pawn, the guy they thought they could use to pull all this wool over the eyes of the FISA court, launch Operation Crossfire Hurricane, conduct the entire operation. It could be that this little guy, who had really no power, no influence, was a paid volunteer who they thought they could use and abuse might be the guy that comes back to bite them right in the ass and blow this entire thing wide open. How's that for irony? Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys have a good night. See you tomorrow. Bye.